Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. I am, of course, not David Pakman. David will be back tomorrow. He's traveling today. I'm Benjamin Dixon, host of the Benjamin Dixon Show. But you already knew that if you've been listening and watching the show so far. So let's just jump right into it. One thing that the Republican Party has been shamelessly doing is rejecting any institutional norms that they otherwise would observe. And that's a whole lot of words to basically say that they're bending the rules in their favor, even when they use the rules in their favor, right? This is what they're doing. And for the first time in history, the records for a Supreme Court justice that are to be released to be reviewed by senators so that they can make their decision on this nominee rather. These records are being filtered through by a Republican operative instead of the National Archives. Brett Kavanaugh is now being protected by a Republican attorney who is an operative. Instead of all of his records being released, they are releasing a specific set of records during a very narrow time frame of his service, his previous service. I want to bring up an article, a quote for you now. This is from the New Republic. Chuck Grassley, the Iowa Republican senator who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, sent a letter notifying Minority Leader Chuck Schumer last week that he was, quote, not going to put American taxpayers on the hook by seeking Kavanaugh's records from his time as Bush's staff secretary. He will still request records from his Kavanaugh served as in the White House counsel's office. It's unlikely that those records, Grassley wrote, would provide any meaningful insight into how Kavanaugh would perform his judicial duties if confirmed to the Supreme Court. Now, I mean, at face value, that is absurd. First of all, he's saying that we're not going to put American taxpayers on the hook. Listen, we could spend money on everything else. We just gave a $1.5 trillion giveaway, a $1 trillion giveaway to the wealthiest people in the country. I'm sure that we can afford a few $1,000,000 to make sure that we get all of the records for this nominee so that we can examine everything that he did, particularly in a time that's most significant to American history. We are literally engaged in wars right now, 2 presidents later, that were initiated during Kavanaugh's time, right? So we need time serving for the president. So we need to see these records. We need to see what he believed, what he said, how he explained things, and it goes beyond that. So the excuse is the excuse that we won't put America's taxpayer dollars on the hook is patently absurd. But then the second part, that it doesn't tell us anything meaningful about how he was served, is also patently ridiculous. But again, like I said at the beginning of the segment, Republicans have absolutely no problem rejecting institutional norms that they otherwise would use in their favor. Let's go to the next quote so we can deepen this a little more. This is from Senate Majority Leader, and this is what he said, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He said the Republican majority has cast aside Democratic wishes for openness and transparency and has made a partisan request for only a small subset of George Kavanaugh's records. It is such a break from precedent that you have to wonder, what are Republicans hiding about Judge Kavanaugh's records? And that's the only thing that you can conclude, is that Republicans are hiding something. Of course they're hiding something. Look at the time frame that they're hiding it from. Let's go to the next quote, because this really just puts it all together. This is what they're hiding. Actually, this is the quote from the New Republic. There doesn't appear to be any reasonable justification to keep those documents out of the public's eyes before Kavanaugh's confirmation vote, other than the concerns that you might find something that could prevent it. The next quote is the one that I want right here. As staff secretary from 2003 to 2006, Kavanaugh would have been well placed to weigh in on some of the Bush administration's most significant moments, including the Iraq War and its aftermath, the Abu Ghraib scandal, and other torture-related policies, the reauthorization of the Patriot Act, the federal partial birth abortion ban, and more, according to the New Republic. These are critical issues. This is not just a way of slowing down the process. These are critical issues that we can get insight into how this man actually thinks and how he is going to adjudicate on the bench. This tells us who he is as an individual, yes, but more specifically, it tells us who he is with regard to some of the most critical issues of our day. We are literally engaged in those conflicts till today. And he was there in 2003 in a position of influence where he could have given some statements of substance that shine insight into who he is and how he thinks. And yet Chuck Grassley of the Republican Party doesn't think there's anything there. This is absurd. And of course, that is the talking point that is now being reverberated through their echo chamber all day long today, all day long going forward. They're going to say there's nothing there. There's nothing important. We have enough records to determine who he is. The fact of the matter is, in what way? I don't even have the words for it. In what way would any reasonable human being look at the time period in which we initiated generation-long wars, and this guy has had input into it? What reasonable human being would not be interested in it? You want to know who? Conservatives, Republicans, who are more interested in how they could win a fight. They're more interested in how they could win a Facebook argument than they are putting someone qualified on the bench. That's all this is about. All this is about is scoring points for their red team, for the red team. This is all they care about. And ultimately, the other side of that coin is not only do they just want to win Facebook arguments for their football team, the red team, they also want to make sure that they get anybody. They don't care how he rules on any other issue, so long as they get someone who would be a defining vote in overturning Roe versus Wade. And we have the opportunity to actually see what caliber of a person we're putting on the bench for the next 30 years. And all they care about is making sure that they can score some points for their side.